240 SX. A 240 SX. Ooh. $6,000, alright. What? Needs a little bit of everything. God. Never mind. $9,000. Nice. Good starting picture. Nice. That's pretty rough. RB20. Nice. It's like the SR20 but cheaper, but a 6-cylinder. I like that. Maybe Miatas? $5,000. Oh wow, that's one hell of an interior picture. Get an engine rebuilt soon. Does not in getting engine rebuilt. Has Borla exhaust that sounds great. Has halo. Needs new soft top. Still functional. Does not leak. Then why do you need a new soft top then? Yeah, what? I don't understand. Can I help you?
Stop looking at 240 SXs. Stop looking at Miatas. Stop looking at all those raggedy RX-7s. Stop it. What you really need to be looking at is an E36. I don't want to see you overpaying for cars, alright? Respect the chassis. Get yourself a good chassis. No more of that JDM BS. I'm sorry. It's over.
Okay.
Nostalgia is over. You got that? It's dead. Alright. Get yourself a car.
Hello and welcome to a very, very, very slow yet competent chassis. We're in a 1996 E36 318Is. For the performance of this car, it's very luxurious. And to talk about luxury in this car, I'm not gonna focus on. However, the driving. This car is on some BC Racing Coilovers, and it is on some RE71R tires, so it grips really well. My favorite part is its willingness to change direction. Like, this thing is just like, it's on rails. I know people tend to hear that all the time. However, check this out. This car is not going to break any lap records whatsoever. In fact, the owner is Matt, and that is the same Matt where I drove his LS swapped 240 SX, his S13. This is just one of his shit beater cars, if you will. He did bring it to the track at Harris Hill, and he was in advanced class, and this car handles very well at the limit because it doesn't have a lot of power, so you're driving slow car fast the whole time, which is hilarious. Like, okay, that's 50, that's 55, and we're approaching a corner, and easy does it, right? This car needs either an S50, an S52 motor, hell, even an SR20, K20, anything like this. This chassis is for motor swaps. These cars right now, with how the car market is, they're bottomed out. This car is absolutely in a shape. It's in okay shape, but again, it has 261,000 miles. The 4-cylinder is not very confidence inspiring, but it's just enough to get around. It feels like an NA1 Miata, if you will, or something maybe just a tad slower. So it's just enough. I will say the gas mileage has been fantastic in this car. But I mean, we're not here for miles per gallon, we're here for miles per gallon. This car, the chassis is what you're buying. I've had 5 Miatas, I've had 4 NA Miatas, 1 turbo, 1 ND Miata, which you've seen. I've had 5 S13s, hatches, and 1 coupe, and they're so rickety. It's very I know it weighs less. It's going to be like maybe 200 pounds to 250 pounds less in this car, maybe more if you get a straight 6. However, it's just such a stout chassis. Like, this chassis itself is, what is this guy doing? This chassis is so cohesive. It's so tight. Like, this is stuff that you would achieve by stitch welding an S chassis. And I can't imagine what this thing would be like with a roll bar, a stitched chassis. Like, this thing would be an insane cruiser. But I just wanted to talk about how good these cars are for the price and what people look for in building a sports car that they can take on the track or drifting. This car communicates extremely well. It is an absolute joy to drive. It's not going to blow anyone away. However, when you start riding momentum in those corners, it's fantastic. Like, this car with the current setup, with just some tires, some coilovers, maybe an alignment, I'm not sure if he has an alignment done, with everything all put together, is so much fun. It is the essential basics of slow car fast, but with a little bit of luxury feel. Like, this car going, 70, 80, even 90 is like super smooth. It's not super rattly. It's not rickety. I feel that a lot in the S chassis I had. My first S chassis was put together by some zip ties, and the battery in the back, battery was placed in the back tray where the spare should go in my S13, with 2 toolboxes wedged in there to hold it down. So I'm just sharing with y'all where I have come from and to experience cars like these, because trust me, y'all, I have been there. All the younger people that are watching, like, we have been in some ratchet cars over time, but we love that. These cars have so much character. And that's just one thing I really love about this car, is it has a lot of character. People have been messing with me on the road. However, it's so funny whenever you get to a corner and somebody's still like messing with you in a Challenger or Charger or something, and you just whip right through and they just get dusted by a car that maybe makes 110 horsepower. There is no LSD, so I can't do any sweet burnouts. And in fact, I'm gonna give it a try right now. Let's see. Nope, we are we are understeer city right now because we don't have enough power, and that's okay.
Oh, nice.
Like, this is balls to the wall. All right, 35. We're going downhill, and 60. there it is. And the brakes, I'll tell you, the brakes on this car are so suspect. And you'll hear them. Watch, I'm gonna do a little brake check. You might have heard the squeal.
It feels like home. It feels like being at home.
Yeah, that is one thing. This car does feel like being at home because, again, she and I, like, this woman here has put up with a lot of my shit, and she's eventually come to realize that she's just gonna have to live with us for the rest of her life.
Yeah.
Like, and she's okay with that. So it brings us nostalgia, really, because we've been together for a long time, and God, look how this thing changes direction.
It is nice, I will say. Like, I'm truly comfortable.
God, it is. Oh, it's fun. It's just a blast. Hopefully, there's no more deer. But look at us. We're just booking it around. We're just swinging around corners, and this thing is totally planted because, again, I don't have enough power to break the rear end loose. So you're just gonna have to drive the chassis the whole time. Please don't overlook this. I know it's not JDM. I know it's not some fucking Initial D stuff, and that's fine. Like, and
I mean, but even you yourself, like, once you were driving this for a couple of days, it humbles you to the point to where, like, once you got back in your M2,
that's pinned, by the way.
Like, you definitely felt that, like, you were. This had taught you to drive your BMW just a little bit.
It did. Okay,
just
so
a tad.
Real quick, another thing to talk about is this car actually taught me to drive my M2 better. I've been having trouble heel towing in my M2 and shifting every now and then. They just have such a long throw in their shift. Like, this is like feet away from going from second to third, and the M2 is no different. But this car has taught me a lesson on how to heel tow in my M2, which I had trouble with, and we'll talk about that when I do review my M2. And then also banging gears out. Like, these cars want you to bang gears out. It's satisfying. It's that you don't have to drive it super smooth like a Honda transmission, and you don't have to drive it like a Volkswagen to where you don't feel the connectivity of the shifter like you. And one thing about BMWs that this car has also taught me, along with other BMWs I've driven, is when you're shifting with the manual, you are driving with literally the drivetrain right here.
They're asking for the punishment.
Yeah,
Like,
they're begging. They're like, yes, this is what I'm made for. Let's go. And this car is no exception, despite its age. Man, get yourself an E36 because these cars are awesome. We're gonna go put this guy on the tier list. Ah yes, this was my first E36 to drive, the 318Is. What a good start. The E36, to me, was supposedly a lot smaller of a car because I thought, you know, a car back in that era has to be small. However, when you look at the data, the dimensions of the E36 are very similar to my current M2, which baffled me because driving the E36 around made me feel like I was in a very small car. In terms of the dimensions, the E36 is 175 inches long, whereas my M2 is 176 inches long. Huh, peculiar. Meanwhile, the width is substantially bigger on the M2, obviously because of that track and that wide booty of it, but the E36 is 67 inches wide, meanwhile the M2 is 73 inches wide. The actual height of both cars is very similar, within an inch. The E36 is 55 inches tall, and the M2 is 56 inches tall. So you can kind of see why I was baffled at driving the E36 and feeling like it was a smaller car, but then parking them next to each other, I was just like, that's really weird. They look almost identical in size. Now, here's the kicker. The wheelbase on both cars is almost exactly the same. In fact, the E36 is 0.3 inches longer than the M2's wheelbase. That blew my mind. So the M2 and E36 are right around 106 inches wheelbase, with the E36 going for 106.3. In terms of weight, the 318 is definitely a lot lighter than your average E36 with the straight six. For those, you want to add maybe another 250 to 300 pounds over the 318IS's weight of 2976 pounds. Meanwhile, the M2 weighs in at 3600 pounds. I felt right at home in this E36 and didn't feel like it was way too heavy at all. It just felt very robust. The drivetrain on this 318IS is a 1.9 liter M44 B19. It's super smooth but not inspiring at any point in the rev range. Consistency is definitely a strength. You won't miss it if you decide to yank it out. I'd assume the larger straight six options have more character and are much more livable. The ZF 5-speed is stout as its reputation remains consistent. I believe the tranny is one of the many components that you can retain for your preferred swap. The clutch and shifter are both nice and easygoing with a long travel and pretty vague feel in typical BMW fashion. Overall, the drivetrain is stout, smooth, and, well, meh, all at the same time. The brakes at first feel very suspect and grindy. It actually took me a while to realize that they were aftermarket brake pads, but it actually turns out you can hammer down on them and they'll grab for more than you thought due to them being hawk pads. Stopping the under 3,000 pound car is a small task for these brakes. The suspension is absolute choice paired with the BC Racing Coilovers and RE71Rs. The RE71Rs are mounted on a larger Style 32 wheel you typically find on a big boy 5 Series of that era. The handling is very neutral and doesn't sweat being tossed into a corner. From entry to mid-corner to exit, it's all a delight. The steering was solidly weighted and predictable. The chassis is the highlight. I was expecting a rattly old German car with some flex, like mad flex like an S chassis, but it was shockingly good. There wasn't very much flex really at all for a car of this era. Best description is a quality built chassis with a great package underneath. Overall, this E36 in its current 318IS form with the mods is firmly sitting in B tier. Even with its lackluster but reliable 261,000 mile engine, I still cannot believe how old this car is and how many miles are on the clock because it was a very fun experience. I am now a firm believer in the E36 and I hope to someday drive an E36 M3. I wanted to thank Matt again for letting me borrow one of his many cars he's had, and we'll review all of those at some point in time, but he let me borrow it for a couple weeks and that was pretty awesome of him. So Matt, again, I appreciate it, man. Thank you so much. The car was amazing, as you know. Thank you so much for checking this video out. And if you would, please like, subscribe, comment, you know, the typical YouTube BS. Just get it in there. I appreciate you giving me your time. Go back, watch some of my other videos, and I hope to see you in the next one. And of course, headphone users beware. Here comes the rev video. Bye. Get it? My favorite aspect about this car is its eagerness to change direction. Oops.